It's the Beatles from the beginning to the end. It's their solo careers. It's their humor. It's their incredible music. It's the British invasion. It's their American adversaries. It's an historical musical education. It's the Beatles and a whole lot more. A Beatles fan's paradise. It's BeatlesARama. Tune in. You'll love it. This is Pat Matthews Productions, and I want to welcome you to BeatlesARama TV, your favorite interviews and video, all in one place, right here. BeatlesARama TV. BeatlesARama TV is on the air.
Hello, everybody. I'm James D. Jones of the Magical Mystery Tour for BeatlesARama Radio and TV. I've got an extremely groovy guest for you today that you are going to know about, from the deepest corners of the Beatles archives to untold stories and the solo years. Tonight, we're opening up the vaults. Our guest just isn't an author. He's a musical detective and a historian who spent years dissecting the words of the Beatles, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and beyond. His latest work dives into a fascinating chapter of the George Harrison in 1979, a moment often overlooked but filled with transition, tension, and truth. I got my mind set. Please welcome Luca Perasi. So, Luca, how are you?
Thank you, James, for this fantastic introduction. I'm fine. Today is a very sunny day with a bit of wind here in Milan, but everything's very good. So I'm very happy to be with you today.
Well, thank you, Luca. It's a pleasure to have you on BeatlesARama Radio and TV. Now, Luca, you just don't write about music. You reconstruct moments in time. So let's open up the vault and get right to the questions, okay? So right off the bat, if you could sit in on one studio session, no rewinds, which one are you choosing and why?
Oh, good question. As I say, I mean, there's many, but probably I cannot really choose one right now. Well, one of the Beatles for sure, and let's choose one from Please Please Me, the first album.
Nice.
The most exciting. So probably being in the studio the whole day with the Beatles when they recorded the whole album.
Yeah.
That would be the day I would choose. Yeah.
A 12-hour session for Please Please Me, because they were the new kids on the block and they were told, you got 12 hours, boys, make the best of it. And that would be a great session to sit on, because creativity, tension, excitingness, I mean, just a lot of things going in on that session alone. That is a good session for you to choose. I like your choice there.
Yeah, I mean, you got a band like the Beatles. They were in their 20s, just starting with a contract with EMI, and so they were so well, rehearsed. And so they basically went in the studio and played the set with some of the new songs. So it must have been really exciting to hear the sound of the Beatles, the early Beatles, in the studio. Because, being in a recording studio can be boring, extremely boring when it comes to overdubbing, doing multiple takes. Okay, can you do another take of this vocal, please? Blah, blah. And they basically did, or used the studio as their stage on that day. So I think that's an incredible thing.
And the fact that they saved Twist and Shout for the very last number because it just shredded John's throat so much.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that good choice, Luca. I like that. Now, let me ask you this. What's the most misunderstood Beatles solo era myth you've ever uncovered?
Hmm. Well, you're talking about a specific fact or an era or whatever.
Hmm.
Hmm. So, well, there's many because when it comes to, well, Mark Lewison will shed some light
Yeah.
on some Beatles myth to be debunked in his next volumes. So
Hmm.
let me think about something about well, taken from solo careers, which I am writing about. Well, there's many things. We all know that, for example, Band on the Run by Paul McCartney has got a number of myths that still are have their place in the narrative.
Hmm.
So, well, we all know that Wings went there without two members
Right.
of the band, but they didn't really step out at the last minute. Both, one of them, Harry McAuliffe, guitar, stepped out from the band 15 days before, a couple of weeks before. And Dennis Sywell was the one who said, "Well, I'm not going to Lagos." The very day they were supposed to leave for Lagos. That's one thing. Which, I mean, maybe it's not a big difference, but you can simply say, "Oh, okay, two members of the band left the day before." Well, that's not completely true. And then the other thing is that Paul was robbed when he was in Lagos, and I felt since quite a while that he was, confusing a bit things because he said many times, "Well, I was robbed my tapes, I was robbed uh, my acoustic demos." Very difficult to understand, but in the end, what happened? Yeah, he was robbed, but all the tracks were already recorded. So the second part of the narrative, when he says basically, "Well, I have to go through my songs again and re-record them." Well, they did not re-record the
Yeah.
tracks, but I mean, that is an important aspect in my book. So putting the narrative and the facts straight. Uh, at the same time, I think uh, rock and roll, rock, pop history is made of also this little myths that
Yeah.
help us to, what to get to terms with these people, with these heroes. And sometimes they build a different narrative because it sounds good.
Yeah. It's a good
Yes,
spin.
it's a good spin, definitely. But then in the end, it doesn't change that much because it's the music that we love.
That's it.
So, and then, after 50 years or whatever, your memory cannot be really that precise. You cannot really remember if you were in the office that specific day, if you are an employee and you're a musician and you spend lots of days in the studios and recording and stuff. So for them, it's similar. So it's very difficult for them to really remember everything unless you are not reading your own diary. You know.
Ah, very good. Now, Luca, do you approach a record like a fan first or as a historian first?
No, historian first. I mean, I'm still a fan when it comes to McCartney and the
Oh,
Beatles and
yeah.
stuff, but obviously, uh, but I changed my way of considering these records and writing the books. I'm not writing from the perspective of a fan, not at all. I am putting together facts, as I said before,
Hmm.
and trying to, you know, let me use this word, analyze music, which
Okay.
I know it could be sort of a contradiction in terms, because music is not the sum of the parts. Music is the overall effect. It's what we hear. And then that said, it's a great exercise to analyze this form of art, because pop music is a form of art,
Yeah.
and to analyze this and really trying to understand how the song is structured, and what instrument they played, what a guitar does. This kind of little things which I describe in my books without being too technical. I play, I have a knowledge of music, basic knowledge of music, but I don't want to offer to audience academic kind of information. So I always try to have an engaging kind of narrative, but being very dry in my writing style, and putting together all these things. And through these books and this description, you can enjoy music even more. There are studies from psychology which say that you can enjoy music more once you have understood the structure of a piece, and that is for
Yeah.
classical music, and that is for pop. So it's an additional enjoyment you can have reading
An enhancement,
about
if you
an
would.
enhancement. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it.
I like that. Now, speaking of your books, Luca, you go deep into sessions. What's one tiny detail fans always miss that changes the whole story?
Well, there's many. I mean, let me add this. My books are built with the participation of people who were there during the session.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I've interviewed many people, engineers, producers, musicians themselves. So if you rely on these people, then you're not building a narrative for your own, goal or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The narrative builds itself, and come to your question, is very difficult because, I mean, tiny details are everywhere when it comes to pop music, especially if I think about McCartney. There's so much to discover. So it's really a work of discovering little things. Well, sometimes maybe you can discover that I don't know, maybe you were convinced that Paul was playing drums and he didn't, or the other way around, or the fact that you always thought that a particular sound was a guitar and then is a synthesizer. All these kind of little things. I love to really put my best headphones and go through the songs and really trying to understand what they did in the studio, which kind of effects did they use. And then once I got this information that for many years when I was just a fan, I didn't care really to understand that much. But over time, I felt I was interested. And then if you got the chance to talk about someone who, like you, Pageant, for example, and I said, well, I noticed this little sound, what it is, and it can reveal this details, then it's really an important part of the process. So being in touch with these people and having their words, so very important to conduct the interviews in an open kind of way. So have them talking about what they remember. Then you can try to help them, because in their case it's just maybe 1 month, 2 months of sessions, and in my case, in fans' case, it's 40 years of repeated listenings. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. Yeah, earlier before we started recording, we were talking about how folks tend to wear out records and you
Yeah.
have to rebuy them because you played them so much through the years. So, exactly. Now, Luca, how do you decide when, we'll say, a forgotten album is actually worth a full book?
It depends because I created this series of books called Milestones, and has to say, okay, important albums in the history of rock and pop.
Yes.
So the way it's organized is that basically I'm in charge of McCartney and some of the solo Beatles, like George Harrison, which
Hmm.
is my latest book. And then there are other authors which are writing about other stuff, other artists which, I mean, they are experts on them, so it makes
Yeah.
sense you have a good series of books centered on albums, not only on the Beatles. uh, when it comes to McCartney, my plan is to do all of his albums because for one reason or another they are important. So I started with Band on the Run, which is very popular and
Oh, yeah.
the bestseller for Paul McCartney and Wings. But then I thought, well, I got uh, other albums that people love, maybe more, even more, that I love, that are worth to be discovered because no one ever cared to. And so the second book I dedicated to a McCartney album was Press to Play, which is a
Oh,
really forgotten album,
yeah.
really forgotten album. But I had a couple of interviews from way back. I got an interview with Jerry Marotta. Then I got back in touch with Carlos Salomar. I had an interview with Hugh Padgham. So when you get these people on board, then you can
Hmm.
really build something interesting. Then I got another one on Back to the Egg, which are very much loved
I
album
love that record.
by
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you got the right people on board. You love the album. No one ever thought of dedicating even a chapter to a certain album, and then you got all this material, and you say, okay, let's do a book, let's do a whole book. There's so much to tell, and the latest on George Harrison is another example. I mean,
Yeah.
All Things Must Pass is the album that
Yeah.
come comes to mind when you're talking about George Harrison and his solo career. Then I thought, well, I want to do something different. I always loved this album, so it's also uh, it has to do also with my own preferences, with my own tastes.
Hmm.
I always loved this album, George
Oh, yeah.
Harrison, very melodic album and really, really great. And I thought, well, uh, I want to do something because the songs are so good, the
Oh, yeah.
production is so good, and so I mean that's how I built my projects. But in the case of McCartney, as I told you, the plan is to do all of his albums.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's not easy
Yeah.
because if I'm lucky, as I say, I can do a couple of books a year. So
Right.
McCartney did something like 20 albums, or 25 probably,
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
include classical music.
Oh,
And
yeah. That's
so
right.
2025, I mean, it will take a while, but I mean, I started. There's another one coming in April on London Town, so that will be my fourth.
Ooh.
And you know,
I
so
love
it's
that record too.
oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Well, Luca, when you're doing your research for your books and you're really getting deep in all kinds of facts and details, and I know this has got to happen for you, when sources conflict,
Hmm.
how do you choose what becomes truth in your narrative?
Oh, I've learned over the years that the best thing is reporting both sources.
Mm,
If they are presenting conflicting facts,
mm-hmm.
then you can have a, a real evidence that the facts were not happening how one of the two parties is saying. So when you get, if you get an evidence and in an, I mean, true evidence of what happened,
Mm-hmm.
then you can report both anyway,
Mm,
but you get an evidence of what happened. So you can say, okay, this is what happened, but this person remembers it differently, which anyway is interesting because
mm-hmm.
it shows that what we think is the truth uh, sometimes, well, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a partial truth, sometimes it's just memory playing tricks on us. And it's interesting because you are talking with people, so there's always a human factor in my books.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting anyway to, to present how some people remember things or facts, even though they were wrong.
Ah, gotcha. Well, let me
So
ask you this.
yeah,
What's harder, documenting facts or interpreting intent?
both are difficult. Both are difficult because in my case, I'm presenting facts because the approach is historical.
Right.
So finding the facts is the most difficult thing because if you don't have them, you
Yeah,
cannot build anything else. So
that's true.
the foundation are facts. So you need them first. Then understanding the intent and stuff, it's important as well
Hmm.
because maybe you tend to interpret yourself what happened, and that is could be dangerous if you're an author, and don't want to do it. I don't want
Right.
to. I want to, you know, I want to be in the background. I mean, the thing for me is not showing off or being in the spotlight as a writer in my book,
Hmm.
but being in the background. That's more
Ah,
important. And if you can do this, that means you are doing, I think, the best job you could do because you are just presenting to people what happened, what is a result of your research,
hmm.
and not putting yourself forward. It's not that important.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I know it sounds, uh, maybe a bit strange because if you're putting your name on a book, then you can be proud. Oh, I am proud of what I did. But at the
Right.
same time, I'm just a vehicle for facts.
Yeah.
It's not important that I come out from this book as the greatest writer on earth. The important
Yeah.
thing is that the book is clear, the facts are documented, and
Hmm.
then people can enjoy these things, you know. And uh, it's not a necessarily it's not fantasy. There's a
Right.
narrative, but you got to be very dry, as I told before, very dry in your
Hmm.
writing, and that's straight to the point. I think I am the kind of guy who enjoys very much when someone writes and goes straight to the point.
Nice. Well, and I think the readers appreciate it too, because it's one, easier to read, easier to understand, and there is no outside deciding factors on facts. It's actually, here's the facts. Now,
Yeah.
late 70s, Paul McCartney, was he chasing art, charts, or survival?
Hmm. Well, to me, McCartney conceives music as art, definitely.
Yeah.
So I, I don't think he changed his view even in the late 70s,
Hmm.
but at the same time he was chasing charts, definitely.
Absolutely.
And if we think about his output at the time, that was Back to the Egg, which is a so different from the
Oh
previous one,
yeah.
London Town, so different.
Yeah.
We have to consider one key factor
Mm.
that is the fact that he had signed a new contract with Columbia at the time.
Yes, he did.
So
Yes.
he went through quite an extensive period of negotiations and stuff, and so that was the most lucrative contract ever, as they labeled it. And
Hmm.
but Columbia definitely put some pressure on Paul to change a bit his sound, his style. So Back to the Egg, which I love, it's a great album, and many people love this album,
Same.
was in part, at least, the product of saying yes to their record company.
Ah, I see. So that's why it's so different because the new label said, "Hey, we want this kind of record," and Paul wanting to get that label, Price said, "Yes, let's do it."
And then you mentioned Survival.
Yeah.
Well, for him at the time, we're talking about 79, so it was almost 10 years of Wings.
Yeah.
It's the end of the decade, and definitely things were changing at the time. So if we go back in time and um think about how the Beatles or the ex-Beatles were considered at the
Hmm.
time of 77, 78, 79, it was not a good
Hmm.
moment for them.
No.
So people were thinking, oh, okay, they are a relic from the past, so who cares
Oh,
about the Beatles
yeah.
and stuff. But at the same time, so definitely was a challenging era.
Yeah.
And so Back to the Egg was not successful as they thought, but it was not that bad, also in
No.
commercial terms. Maybe they could expect Back to the Egg to sell, I don't know, 8 to 10 million copies. I think it sold something like 3 millions or something like that in the end, if you put together all the sales and certifications we have and the
Hmm.
things that we don't know, because at the time, once you were certified
Hmm.
platinum, then okay, you were certified platinum, and there was a something that you can spend to say, yeah, okay, the album was certified platinum. But this certification that were never updated in many cases, so we don't
Oh,
really know how many copies were
I
sold at the
see.
time. So yeah, there was a bit of trying to survive to that environment, and I think it succeeded, right?
Yes, indeed. I recently just watched the Paul McCartney film Man on the Run, the documentary.
Yeah.
And I noticed in that they really downplayed Back to the Egg and said it
Mm.
wasn't commercially as successful as they had hoped it to be. But in my mind, as a fan listening to the music, I love it. Just like how much I love Ram. A lot of people, the critics, really gave it a really hard time. It's one of my favorites. And same with Back to the Egg. Now, speaking of albums like Back to the Egg, were there creative risk or strategic pivots, you think?
On that album,
Yes.
oh no, it's there's lots of creativity. I mean, they recorded the album in many places, many strange places. So uh, I I go through all these places in my book, and
Mhm.
they recorded in Scotland, um, in a barn. Essentially, they recorded a Lim Castle.
Mhm.
Um, they recorded a replica studio, which was in the basement of MPL. They
Mm.
just built a temporary studio in the basement of Paul's offices in Soho Square, because Abbey Road was just booked for 4 or 5 months.
Oh,
And at the
wow.
time, McCartney had to finish the album, had
Mm,
to really over doing the overdubs and stuff. So they needed the space for
yeah.
recording. So
Yeah.
that was a replica of Abbey Road 2, kind
Mm,
number 2. So there was lots of creativity, lots of experimentation. Someone has said in the past that Back to the Egg is it's a bit fragmented as an album because it starts with the reception
yeah.
so you got an instrumental that basically starts the album, then you got Getting Closer, but then you got another little snippet of the acoustic song, We're Open Tonight, then you got the
Yeah.
broadcast on side 2, which is a kind of a classically inspired piano piece. So there's really much creativity and experimentation. So, well, on the one hand, Paul accepted the challenge of Columbia
Yeah.
in making an album with a different sound, well, more aggressive, definitely in guitars, lots of rockers.
Oh, yeah.
But he didn't give up on having ballads and having a touch of R&B or the jazzy kind of number with Baby's Request. So
Yes.
there's a certain variety as well on the album.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big variety. Now, do you think that the Beatles' solo careers were driven more by competition or independence?
Competition between themselves. Are you talking
Hmm.
about, or with the others, with the
I
other
would say
group of people?
between themselves and the current artists of the day.
Well, in the case of McCartney, definitely yes. He is very competitive.
Yeah.
So he was always looking at John, well, at least until 1975 when he was still active. And John was looking at what Paul was doing.
Oh,
So
yes.
they were definitely checking out what the other was doing.
Hmm.
And Paul is definitely competitive with other artists as well.
Oh, yeah.
So he wanted to be number one, and so he was checking out uh, the whole musical scene at the time. So you cannot be a successful pop composer if you don't listen to other kind of music, if you
Hmm.
don't listen to the music on the radio and stuff. Whatever is the way you listen to music,
Hmm.
you gotta be in touch with your sources. In the case of George, I don't think he was that competitive. Maybe more independent, more focused on what he really wanted to express as a human being,
Hmm.
which it's true for everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
even in the case of McCartney, you got lots of stuff which are autobiographical, although not in a direct way. John, we all know that John was very a bit also self-centered, but he
Hmm.
wants to express what he was feeling in a particular time. When it comes to Ringo, I remember one quote from him around the mid 70s. He
Hmm.
said, "Well, I want to be number one." So he was definitely putting out his records, uh, and he was really hoping for success.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to the Beatles music or the ex-Beatles music, you cannot really uh, conceive this music as detached from commercial success. This is a
Right.
kind of music which needs commercial success. So
Yeah.
if it's not successful, then it shows us something that something didn't work.
Yeah.
So it's linked to commercial success.
Yeah. And I feel personally that George didn't really concern himself with trying to do the popular trends. Rather, he challenged his listeners with his own brand of music.
Yeah.
Where McCartney, you know, Good Night Tonight fit really well in the disco era towards the end of it, right?
Mhm.
So it was a good song for that, but George would never go in that direction. Now, from your research, who do you think understood the business of being a Beatle the best after the breakup?
Well, McCartney definitely. McCartney definitely because um, well, he was the one who suffered the most
Oh
after
yeah,
the Beatles broke up.
yeah.
Uh, also Ringo, also
Hmm.
Ringo, and um, I had written in one of my books, which is called "The Beatles After the Beatles." I had
Hmm.
written in the narrative part. This sentences said something like, "Paul was worried. Uh, well, Ringo was worried about what to do after success, and Paul
Hmm.
was worried about what to do without success."
Oh
So
yeah.
he was definitely chasing this. For him, being in the spotlight and being a pop icon, being
Hmm.
on stage and being constantly in the spotlight is it's not a problem. It what it is it's what he wants to do. Um, he knows that pop music requires a constant effort. Otherwise,
Hmm.
you got to be forgotten instantly, and
Yeah.
it's hard work. It's hard work. You got to really work hard. You got a record, lots of songs. You know that if you write 100 songs, uh, probably 20 you got to throw them in the bin, but
Uh-huh.
then you got to work on the other 80, and then maybe you got 15 that are good for your next project, and the others uh, you will see what to do. So it's a you cannot really stop, and so Paul
Mhm.
never stopped,
Yeah.
and so he interpreted uh, being a pop artist 100%. So he couldn't stay without music, without his audience
Yeah.
for too much. So he was a bit on his own in the first couple of years after the Beatles, but then he formed Wings
Yeah.
because he wanted again to perform and sing live. He told something like, "Well, if I don't sing for 1 year, then it could be a problem. If I don't sing for 2 years, then I could really become a bit rusty, and then my voice uh, would be in trouble. And if you
Mm.
got a voice like Paul McCartney, uh, it's your it's your asset. So it's better
Yeah.
better taking care of it."
Yes, indeed. Now, your latest book,
Yeah.
George Harrison.
Yes.
Um, let's talk about that. With this book, uh, what makes 1979's George Harrison era so compelling to revisit today?
Hmm. Well, there's many things. I wanted to revisit an album which is George Harrison. So I spent quite a lot of time thinking about how about the title of this book. I mean, and in the end, I went for George Harrison by George Harrison, and then a subtitle which is They Turn to Bright, which basically explains the importance of this album and the importance of this period, 77 to 79 for George.
Right.
Because on the one hand, we have George trying to detach from the music business.
Yeah.
So he had 33 and one third out in late 1976.
Hmm. Great
Um,
record, by the way.
Great record, absolutely. Then he spent basically the whole 1977 going to see the races, Formula One races, because he was a big fan. He was a big fan
Oh, yeah.
since he was a kid, and
Mhm.
so he was friends with lots of drivers, and so he just took a break from music. But at the same time, and well, he also spent some time gardening,
Yes,
which
of course.
is another form of art, because
Mhm.
if you wanna be a good gardener, you gotta be very, very careful of what you do. You gotta know what to do. And there's also a visual aspect to the gardening, which is very important. So it's a thing that has got to do much with harmony, which,
Yeah.
which is a key concept for music.
Mhm.
And well, he was detaching from music, but at the same time, he can feel that these drivers, for example, were mm, were so pressured by their business, by their environment. So
Right.
he could feel that it was kind of similar to what he had experienced with the Beatles.
Mm.
So he could say, okay, for me, being in a different environment is good. Is I'm relaxing and stuff. But then he can really understand the position of the drivers. Lots of pressure because of you're driving at top speed. You're required to do many things in a short space of time. You're
Mhm.
required to be number one. So
Yeah.
it could find similarities between Formula One and what he went through with the Beatles. And so he could not really stay that far from music. And
Right.
then these drivers were always saying to him, "What are you doing in your free time?" And he said, "Well, I'm not doing nothing. I'm just spending my time with you and stuff. But what about music?" So he really understood that he was still he was still considered as an artist, as a musical icon, music icon, hero. And so he slowly came back and started writing songs again. And that was one aspect. The other aspect is that uh, many important things happened during 1978 and changed the course of George Harrison's life forever.
Mhm.
The death of his father,
Yeah.
for instance, that was the birth of Danny in August, and then the marriage with Olivia. So you go through these three things in a short space of time between
Yeah.
May and September. And so this album, it's well, sums up to some extent all these things I have mentioned. And
Yeah.
so it's such a bright album, as the title says, such a mellow album. Uh, to
Yeah.
me, it sounds like the product of a man who has found peace, really.
Yeah.
Also, in his relationship with the past, with the Beatles' past, you know.
Mhm.
So we get a couple of tracks like "Not Guilty," which is a
Oh, yeah.
remake of the old Beatles track that was rehearsed for the White Album. Then
Yeah.
you got "Here Comes the Moon," which, I mean, it's a nod. It's a nod to "Here Comes the Sun."
Right.
So that means that he was in a different place,
Yeah.
psychologically speaking. So all these things I have considered and thought, well, I think this album is a great album, musically speaking. It has a special place.
Yeah.
I had the chance to interview co-producer Rice Titleman last
Mm.
year, and so there's many memories of him in the book.
Mhm.
And in a word, I thought, well, yes, let's do it. It's a nice album, and I'm sure people will appreciate, will like it, because it's so underexplored.
If folks enjoy the 1979 self-titled George Harrison album, this book, like we said earlier, will just more enhance your pleasure knowing the stories behind the songs and what was going on with George.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, Luca, was Harrison in 1979 more confident or was he more conflicted?
I think he was more confident at the time. The conflicting times were from his, I think, from the period after the Beatles broke up and until the mid 70s. It was not necessarily in a good place.
Right.
He had lots of troubles, drugs, alcohol, and stuff. We all know that he went through
Yeah.
an hepatitis at some point, and
Mhm.
he joked and said, "I needed hepatitis to quit drinking." So
That's
definitely-
George for you, right?
yeah, that's George. So he definitely went through a lot, and by the time of 77, 78, he was in a perfect place for himself. He was at his best as a human being, as a musician. He was really relaxed, and as I told before, this album, George Harrison, is exactly the product of a relaxed and happy man.
Yeah. That is a great way to sum that up. Now, speaking of George and his role within the Beatles, he was really pigeonholed into certain things, like only 2 songs per album. And, they always, this was George, this was his job in the Beatles.
Mm.
And a lot of the fans even pigeonholed George's personality as the quiet Beatle. Do you think George ever fully escaped being the quiet Beatle, or did the industry just keep putting him there?
Well, if you have a label, generally speaking, it's always difficult to go out and say, "Well, I'm not what you are saying."
Yeah.
So especially if you are in the spotlight because you are a big artist and stuff, you got a label, and it's easier for magazines, for newspapers, for the
Yeah.
press, whoever, to talk about Georgia, well, the quiet Beatles, or Paul, the happy-go-lucky kind of guy. And it's, well, obviously George had a complex personality, and he was able to show many sides of his personality throughout his career. So for him, being out of the Beatles was freedom.
Liberating. It was
Absolutely.
liberating.
Absolutely. In terms of being a more accomplished songwriter, because you cannot come up with something and Here Comes the Sun on the same album and having only these 2 songs.
Right.
You have a backlog of songs, and
Yeah.
that's what happened. And that's what happened with All Things Must Pass. I mean,
Yeah.
that was many of these songs were from the Beatles era.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely for him was freedom. And if you want to discover George Harrison as a human being, well, that would be a difficult journey because he was complex, contradictory.
Yes.
And that doesn't, not to say that. I mean, it was a great man,
Yeah.
a great sense of humor, but as everybody,
Right.
he had contradictions, and that's a fascinating aspect when it comes to musician,
Mhm.
because if you have this contradiction, then you can express these contradictions in your music, and so your output will never be boring. You will have different kind of things, different kind of
Yeah.
songs, many subjects. So that's it. So quiet Beatle, or peaceful one. Yeah, he was peaceful, but at the same time, as I was saying before, he was searching for speed and driving and Formula One, and he was a good driver. He was
Yeah.
a good driver. There's a couple of nice episodes that people can discover in the book about
Mm.
him going crazy when driving. I mean, it was the other side of George Harrison, being
Yeah.
quiet and relaxed at home, and then needing speed
Yeah.
as
That
well.
adrenaline rush.
Yeah,
Yeah.
adrenaline in his life. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. Well, getting back to the 1979 self-titled release, George Harrison, what's one moment from that album's creation that changed how you see him?
You're talking about the recording, or you're talking about the songs themselves, or the way it was conceived?
I would say the first two, a combination of the two.
The recordings. Well, I think the band that they put together is a very important element.
Oh, yeah.
When
Amazing.
I was talking about it with Russ Titelman, he
Mhm.
used an expression. Well, we know that Willie Weeks is on bass on this album.
Yeah.
Andy
We love
Newmark,
you, Willie.
yeah, Andy Newmark is on drums,
Mhm.
and we have Neil Larson on keyboards and piano, and then there's George on guitars, and then there are other guests like Eric Clapton. There's Gary Wright. There's lots of people as guests, but the core band, was still Winwood. The core band was George, Willie Weeks, Andy Newmark, and Neil Larson. And Russ said, well, Neil Larson is a secret weapon on this album. And I completely agree with Russ. The work that Neil Larson does throughout the album, on keyboards, on piano, I mean, it's a perfect complement to George's guitars and vocals. And so I love the arrangements. I love the fact that it was new, because George had played already, although not necessarily in the studio, with Willie Weeks and Andy Newmark. But Neil Larson was new one. And I think this is one of the elements I consider very important in, making me think about this album as something really different in George's discography. The sound of these keyboards is a very nice touch.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the songs, well, I mean, it's hard to choose one or two songs for me that are particularly significant. But
Mhm.
I would go also in this case with two examples from my conversation with Ross Titelman.
Yeah.
So the first is that when Russ heard the demos, he said to George, well, great stuff, but we miss a love song here. And so then George went to away, and he came back with Dark Sweet Lady.
Oh, yeah.
So he specifically came up with this song upon request by Russ Titelman.
Nice.
So that is a fantastic song. And
Yeah.
and the other thing is Your Love Is Forever,
Oh,
which Russ said to me when I heard the demo. It was only an instrumental, so there was only guitar. And I said, George, this is one of the best things and best melodies I've ever heard. You got to put words on it. And so George came to listen again to his song, and added words and a melody on top. And so these two things really changed my view on the album, because that shows how George was capable to, maybe he was not as prolific as McCartney,
right.
but at the same time he was capable to add a melody or write a song in a short space of time, just because he knew that you got to do something for completing the track list of the album, and that's fantastic. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that shows how George was a great songwriter, and this album, I think, it's one of the best representation of
Yeah.
his skills as a songwriter and a melodist.
Yeah, it with that record, from the very first track to the very last note, it all fits together so well. It's just not a bunch of songs thrown in and there you go, that's my record. It's more like well thought out
Yeah,
and purposely placed. Yeah.
very organic in sounds, and also
Yes.
very well sequenced, which is an aspect. The sequencing an album is a key aspect.
Yeah.
The Beatles have always been very careful at sequencing their album
Yeah.
in the right way, with the right song to start an album, the right song to end an album, and so
Mhm.
this George Harrison album has a kind of similar approach when it
Yeah.
comes to sequencing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's a good way of putting it, too. Now, speaking of the Beatles, are we still discovering new Beatles history or are we just reinterpreting it?
I think we are rediscovering facts and new things
Mhm.
because when it comes to a phenomenon like the Beatles,
Oh, yeah.
you cannot be sure of what really happened until you really go in depth.
Mhm.
It's not because everybody has written about the Beatles or everybody had spoken about the Beatles that we know already everything. So
Right.
there's so much to be told,
Yeah.
and obviously they are still in the spotlight after 6 years. I mean, and obviously each generation of people is keen to offer their interpretation of
Mhm.
the music and the facts. We have seen this with Get Back.
Yeah.
That was 2021, and there was
Mhm.
a whole new generation of fans that were rediscovering the Beatles that maybe were thinking, yeah, but I mean, what is Get Back? Why they were in the studio playing these songs? I mean, there's not much background explanation in the film, but
Mhm.
you can enjoy the music for what it
Oh, yeah.
is.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can say, well, I want to discover what happened before or what happened after, because you look at, well, you watch Get Back and you are a young fan, maybe you are in your 30s. You
Mhm.
watch Get Back and you say, okay, that was. Then you go on Wikipedia and say that was 69, and then you see that the Beatles split in 1970, so the year after. Then you can
Yeah.
say, okay, but that is a fantastic documentary of the songs, of their music, their relationship, and what happened.
Yeah.
You know, so if you are presenting new stuff to new generations,
Mhm.
then you will have new interpretations of this music, of this
Yeah.
icons, of these musicians. So that's the way it works, and that's why they they are constantly offering new things to people.
Yeah.
That's
And
precisely. I think that quite recently, um, I don't know if it was Sean Lennon.
Mhm.
Sean said something like, "I fear that my father's music could be
Yeah.
forgotten." Blah blah.
Yeah.
So, and the one thing that you have to do uh, in trying to avoid uh, to be forgotten is having new things always out for the
Yeah.
audience, because people and the audience change.
Yeah.
So you got to be ready and offer new
Mhm.
products in maybe in a new way, also in a new way for a new
Right.
audience. You
Yeah.
you always you have to search for a new audience, not necessarily say, okay, I got already my audience. Yeah, but this audience at some point will be no more, and
Right.
you need a new audience for preserving your legacy. You know.
Yeah. Always building. Now, talking about interpretations, Luca, do you think fans romanticize the past or underestimate how strategic these artists really were?
I don't know if it's really possible to understand to the fullest the genius of these people, which definitely were strategic. I think it's impossible to really understand it because you think about the music as being well, it's a product of our creativity, and so they were just musicians, which is true to
Yeah.
some extent.
Yeah.
On the other, if you think about what they created or what they intended to create with Apple,
Hmm.
you can definitely see how visionary they were.
Oh, yeah.
Not only in, okay, we are a group and we are doing music. They were projected in the future, but not in the future of 2 or 3 years. They were
Right.
projected in decades.
Yes.
So it's hard to understand. Probably if you ask people now, do you know that Apple was the name of the Beatles company way before Steve Jobs' Apple was created? And do you know that they had to they had a lawsuit with the Beatles for using not the name but for using musical product integrated in the company. Probably no one knows, and it's not that well known in the younger generation now. But
Right.
then, it's just a silly thing. But having that was the first multimedia company, one of the first
Hmm.
multimedia companies
Right.
ever conceived. So that on its own, this thing can really make you understand how strategic and visionary they were.
Yeah.
They they got in trouble with Apple because they were not businessmen, and because you need a structure, you need
Oh, yeah.
managers, you need a different kind of approach. But if you look at McCartney and the way he does these things even today, uh, if you do not plan, and definitely at the time of Get Back, because we mentioned Get Back, he was the
Hmm.
planner of the band. He was the one who was saying, okay, what's the next project? They released the White Album uh, at the end of November,
Right.
okay, 1978, and they were in the studio for Get Back on the 2nd of January, 1979. So that means 40 days, something like that, after
Yeah.
the White Album was on the market. They were already in the studio with songs to be recorded. So they
Yeah.
started the project, but they got a backlog of songs already. So being strategic also means uh, I have a huge backlog of songs because that is very important when you do music.
Yeah.
And they were visionary because of what I have said. Think about
Hmm.
Apple, think about the way they managed their business even after, especially in the case of McCartney, but also Harrison and Ringo, also John. They got their own studios, so there are many things to be discovered about them, uh, outside being strictly musicians, but also
Yeah.
as men that were capable to organize complex things in their lives.
Well, we're talking about how the Beatles 60 years and going strong still to this day. Beatles are still relevant 60 years later. Luca, let me ask you this. If the Beatles were launching today, okay, would they survive the modern music industry?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, because in the end, what people uh, love is simply put, is a good song, a
Yeah.
good melody, and so this is so important for people. Music is it's I think music is a really the one means of communication that everybody needs,
Yeah.
and so if they would be on the market today, they will they will be huge because of the songs. I mean,
Right.
let's forget about arrangements and stuff. You can arrange songs in a completely different way, in a modern way, but the songs themselves uh, are so great, and with this personality, they are so fresh. And I mean, this well, young people see the Beatles on screen, and they definitely can feel why they were so successful. And
Yeah.
probably some of the young people could think, uh, "Oh, I wish we have the Beatles today."
Yeah, right. Yes. You always see the bands always comparing themselves to the Beatles. And like if they sell more, hey, we sell more than the Beatles. And that's like their claim to fame, even though today's
Yeah,
music industry is totally different from how it was back in the day. But it's amazing to think like I like how you put it. It's just you break it down, it's great songs that people can relate to. In this day and age, a lot of people don't agree on many things. But I think the one thing folks across the board do agree is music. You may not like the same kind of music, but music soothes the soul. It
yeah.
takes you places. It's just great. Now, Luca, I got a question for you. This is your own personal opinion, okay? What do you think is the most underrated solo album of the Beatles?
Okay, now I got to go through everything. Uh, it's difficult because there are many, and then there were albums which went through a reappraisal kind of through the decades.
Yeah.
So probably these days, if I say Ram by Paul
Hmm.
McCartney, this album has gone through a big reappraisal.
Yeah.
But I think that's never enough. I mean, if we go back in time and uh, we reread what they said
Oh,
about the album,
yeah.
um, I mean, it's part of the press. To be fair, part of the musical press at the time, uh, I got good words about Ram, but you know, uh, Rolling Stone did that infamous review, and because of that, uh, that went down in history as
Yeah.
Ram was a bad album, blah blah.
Right.
But it was not really true at the time. I've
Mm-mm.
collected quite a good number of magazines and newspapers from the time, and
Yeah.
you can see that the percentage of bad reviews was not so high,
Mm.
but Rolling Stone was the most important magazine, and
Yeah.
so what happened is that, yeah, basically, this assessment went down in history.
Yeah.
So I think this is a best album of McCartney for me as well,
Mm-hmm.
and so it needs to be discovered again and again. So if I had to
Yeah.
choose one, that would be Ram. Although, as I said, that is that that has gone through reappraisal
Yeah.
uh, through time. There's another one I can mention, and it's another of McCartney, which is Wildlife,
Oh,
because of the fact that uh, we have to consider he was launching Wings.
yeah,
So that was the first album with this band, new band, and it was a really brave move to start the career of Wings with an album like that.
yeah,
Recorded in a few days,
yeah.
not polished, not refined. Just
No,
let's do let's let's do whatever I feel I want to do now.
right.
So that is a great album. I think it's vastly underrated.
Hmm.
Um, Not all the songs are necessarily the best songs Paul ever written, but the
Right.
feel of this album is so warm, and so I think that could be another good option. I know I've chosen two by McCartney, but he did so much stuff.
Oh
Then
yeah.
you mentioned 33 and one third by George
Yes.
Harrison, and that's another album I love.
Yeah.
So let me finish with this. I mean, otherwise
Sure.
I go on and on.
Well, I'll tell you what, archive digging or interviewing, what's more revealing to you, Luca?
uh, it- well, interviewing, you have the human connection with people. So
Right.
when I'm interviewing people, if you're talking about me interviewing people for my books,
Hmm.
well, that's the most enjoyable thing. I mean, you can enjoy discovering a fact, obviously,
Right. Right.
but and that's the uh, you know uh, the side of my personality that is linked to the being an archivist. You know,
Mm.
working in an archival. I love these
Yes.
things, but then you need and that is a very solitary kind of thing that you got to do. Then you need to connect with people, and so
Mhm.
when you're interviewing, that's the most enjoyable part when you got to put together all these pieces, but you got a human connection, you got
Yes.
all these chats, and you can see people. Especially these days, it's so easy to be in touch as we are doing today, and
Yeah.
seeing each other on screen,
Right.
which, I mean, it's not the same. I love the telephone,
Right.
phone calls. I mean, when I was a boy, we only had phone for making our calls, and there was an incredible means of communication anyway, because that was the only one. And so
Right.
you called your parents, and you get your phone, and you can hear their voice
Hmm.
coming through, and there was so emotional, because
Connection.
you can imagine your parents on the other side.
Yeah.
These days you can see each other, and this helps
Yeah.
communication.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
these are two aspects which are important at the same level. But if I get to choose, I choose interviews because of the human side of it.
I like that. Now, Luca, as a writer, I need to ask you, coffee or vinyl when you're busy writing?
No, when I'm busy writing, usually I don't listen to music.
Ah.
So I do this in another moment. So when I get to re-listen to, so well, it happens. It's not completely true. It happens if because maybe I've already went through and listened to the songs,
Right.
and so then I'm writing, and at some point I get a doubt and say, don't know. Let me go through it again. Let me re-listen it again. So when I'm
Ah.
writing, I can put my headphones and go through the songs again, because I'm not 100% sure of something. And so,
Yeah.
well, are you sure? Have I listened to this? I don't know, 10 days ago. Are you sure? Do you want to listen it again? So yeah. But most of the time, coffee is good as a company when I'm writing. Uh, Sometimes, if it's required, also music. But I tend to split listening to music and then writing.
Yeah.
These are two different things, and I don't want to have any background, even other background when I'm writing and stuff. I
Yeah.
prefer to be focused on what I'm doing, and
No
music.
distractions.
Yeah, because music is so good, and
Yeah.
so at some point your mind goes in another place, as you were
Yep.
saying before. So better take 30 minutes and say, okay, I'm stopping, and I can enjoy music.
I like
Uh,
that.
yeah, that's it.
Well, Luca, we're going to get close to wrapping this up, but what's one story that you haven't told yet, but know you will?
Are you talking about a specific album or a specific, you know, contribution by someone that I have not talking about?
Yeah, I
Talk
mean,
about.
something that oh, I've got to get this out. This got to be in the book somehow or another, or maybe even based on a book.
Um, Well, I was friends for many years with ex-Abbey Road engineer Tony Clark,
Yes.
which worked on wildlife, by the way.
Hmm.
And because we talked so many times on the phone, because we've seen each other personally
Yeah.
quite a good number of times. I mean, he was in London, I'm in Milan, but I think we saw each other during the years at least 4 or 5 times.
Oh,
I went to London. He came to Milan, and so we had a special relationship. I think I would love to uh, do something with all these conversations we had, and because these conversations were not only about music or Paul McCartney,
hmm.
or they were about life.
Oh,
So music and life are not two things that you can separate. And
yeah.
so there's many things that I, so far I've never put in a book that he told me, and probably one day they would be worth. Tony sadly passed away uh, 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and that was a kind of a not a easy moment to also for me to get over, because
Yeah.
we really we're friends, and so you know what I mean. So
Yeah. A real
yeah,
connection.
real connection, uh, and that that happened because of one of my interviews, and so
Yeah.
that really explains what I was saying before. So there are many things that we discussed together, and I think it's worth someday. I have to think about the form or about the kind of writing I wanna do. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, to be shaped around these conversations. But that would be interesting in many levels.
Yeah. Now, Luca, you've written several books, and it sounds like you've got several more to write.
Yeah.
When readers finish your books, what do you hope they see differently?
Well, the best thing I can you know accept or receive when
Mhm.
they send me some feedback is basically when they say, I didn't know that.
Mm,
That is an accomplishment for me.
yeah.
So that is today still the best thing. I didn't know that, or I never paid attention to this detail. So thanks for this. Or I can really appreciate more the album or the music after
Yeah.
having read what you have written. So these things are the things that I love,
Yeah.
and so I hope they can say what I said. Well, the thing is, there's no difference between a writer and a reader, because I can feel proud if they say, well, I learned something from your books.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I get to tell you, for me, a book is an accomplishment when I have learned something.
Ooh.
And I learn things when I'm writing. I'm not writing on things I know already.
Right.
I'm not here to teach anything. I'm here to learn and to
Yeah.
share what I've learned with other people. And that's the way I conceive my books. If I write a book and at the end of the book I cannot say I learned so much over the course of this process,
Yeah.
then it's not really an accomplishment.
Yeah.
If I say,
I
okay,
see.
I learned a lot, that was the very enjoyable part for me is learning when I'm writing. Okay, so if I learn much, then I'm ready to share these things with
Yeah.
people, and so that makes two of us that have learned things, or many of us that have learned things. That's it.
Now, so with that being said, it's kind of like the equivalent of that adrenaline rush that you get with your discoveries. You're just as excited about it as the readers will be. And that's a real takeaway from that. That's a success of accomplishment when you're writing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
definitely.
that. I
That's it.
like that a lot. So, with that being said, uh, we're going to wrap it up. I got one last question that I would like to talk to you about, and that is, well, are we closer to understanding the Beatles, or are we further away the more we learn?
Now, understanding the Beatles, it's impossible to me, and this is part of their being such a fascinating thing. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so much to discover first,
Right.
and then understanding is a personal kind of thing. I don't know. Each
Yes.
one of us can understand whatever
Hmm.
from the Beatles. It's like when McCartney says, "Well, okay, I didn't intend, I didn't have this meaning in mind with these lyrics for my song, but you can apply
Yeah.
to your own life." So for me, it's not that important to really understand. I mean, the fact that there was such a great phenomenon,
Yeah.
which is you cannot explain what happened, but
Yeah.
that the mystery and the fact that, I mean, the one thing is, I want to maybe share with you and the audience here, is
Hmm.
that the Beatles, what happened with the Beatles proves to us that everything is possible in life. And unfortunately, also not necessarily in positive terms, but you got to think positive and negative. But let's focus on the positive in this case. Well,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
everything can happen. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
I can tell the same for me. I mean, I can tell this little anecdote that I've told many times, but it's always worth. I mean, when I was 20 or something,
Hmm.
I remember I was talking about McCartney, or one of my biggest dreams in life, and someone asked me, maybe it was my fiance at the time, and someone asked me, what is your biggest dream? Do you have a dream, Luca? And I was 20, something like that, you know. So you can come up with everything. And I said, well, yes, I got a dream, and that would be having my name on a Paul McCartney record. And that happened, you know.
Yeah.
Can you believe
Yeah.
it? That happened when I was working with MPL in 2022.
Yeah.
Then I got my name credited on that record. And so, that is what I mean when I say the Beatles can teach us something, or can we understand something? Yes, maybe we can understand that everything is possible. You got
Yeah.
to work for it. You got to try doing your things at your best,
Yeah.
and that something could happen.
Yeah. You
And
got to
that's it.
believe.
You got to believe it. Yeah, why not? I
Yeah.
mean, I remember this very clearly, that I
Hmm.
said this to my fiance or a friend. I can't really remember who was, but I think it was my fiance. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, it happened 35 years after, but it happened.
There you go. I like that. Well, now, Luca, where can the readers find your books? Where can they go to purchase the several books that you've written already?
You go on Amazon, which is the easiest place where you got everything. Some of my books are also on other platforms like Barnes and Nobles or Waterstones online. I got a website, lilypublishing.com. So you got to find contacts and more information about the books that I have written and other authors have written. So you got a snapshot of
Yeah,
everything that has been produced, and there's also you can find also what's coming next. So
I
that's
like hearing that.
uh, that's a good thing to know. So on McCartney, we will have a London Town
Oh
book in a
yeah.
while. Um, I'm writing about George Harrison, a complete reference book about
Ooh.
his career. It will take a while, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm working on that. So you got many places where you can find uh, everything that I have written.
And your latest book, can you let the readers know the title?
The
And
title is George Harrison by George Harrison. Day Turned to Bright, just published on the 8th of February. So it tells the story behind George Harrison's self-titled album.
nice.
Lots of great stories. Ross Titleman, like, with an exclusive interview in the book, so you will enjoy it, I think.
Fantastic. Now, Luca, before I let you go, uh, what's one story you haven't told yet, but you know you will? I mean, I know your work, you just don't revisit history, it reshapes how we hear it. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the you were talking before about uh, understanding the Beatles and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, I think in particular about McCartney, what hasn't been told really so
Hmm.
far, it's uh, let me put it this way: the the real genius uh, that lies in building music. I was talking before as music as a form of art, and
Yes.
that's something that got to be really investigated when it comes to McCartney, because
Yeah.
I think is really uh, an author in the tradition of the greatest uh, classical uh, authors like Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, and
Yeah.
then Monteverdi, and then there's McCartney. And so, I mean, is in the same league,
Yeah.
and so I think it needs a focus more and more on this kind of art, because we maybe we don't realize that
Hmm.
with McCartney and the Beatles we have this body of work which is like Michelangelo or
Yeah.
the greatest painters and stuff.
Right.
So that is music, and the Beatles music as really one of the uh, let me say let's compare this thing to this music to painting, for example, and
Yeah.
that makes us understand really what needs to be told in depth. I mean,
Yeah.
that is something I want to do it one day.
I like how you are basically saying where people looked at art, the great artists of the of existence is equivalent to what McCartney's doing audio wise, visually,
It
and
is.
just cranking out so much great material. That's great. Now, Luca Perasi, thank you for opening up the vault with us and sharing some of your great stories, your insights, and what is yet to be. And, you know, it's just a real pleasure to speak with you. I look forward to interviewing you again with your next book. And if I can ever be of service to you, by all means, please sound off. I'd be happy to help you. And I just want to personally thank you for your time and your patience and sharing all this great information about your writing, the stories behind your writing, and the way you chase this passion of yours to put it into writing for folks to enjoy and really enhance their pleasure of listening to the records, or perhaps looking at the man, the myth, the legend a little differently. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks to you, James. It was a real pleasure. So
Yes.
looking forward for more interviews with you. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much for this interview today.
Well, you are more than welcome. And for Beatles-A-Rama Radio and TV, I'm James D. Jones with Luca Perasi. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Thanks again, everybody. Enjoy. Look up his books. You will not be disappointed. Lots of great material out there and lots more coming. And I expect great things from you, Luca. I think you're going to do fantastic. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, truly, sincerely, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
From author Jude Sutherland Kessler comes Some Forever. It's a revealing new portrait of John Lennon that goes beyond the headlines. In this intimate, meticulously researched book, Lennon's music, his dreams, and his enduring impact collide with the person behind the myth. Some Forever unlocks the moment that changed rock and the world forever. Whether you're a longtime fan or discovering Lennon anew, Some Forever invites you to see the man, the music, and the meaning that still resonates today. Kessler's latest, Some Forever, is available wherever books are sold or at johnlennonseries.com. Dive in and hear Lennon's story in a whole new light. It's the Beatles from the beginning to the end. It's their solo careers. It's their humor. It's their incredible music. It's the British invasion. It's their American adversaries. It's an historical musical education. It's the Beatles and a whole lot more. It's a Beatles fan's paradise. It's Beatles-A-Rama. Tune in.